What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Scotian Canadian channel, and once again we're going to talk some rumors. We got the big draft tomorrow or today whenever you're watching this video, so a lot could potentially go down around the entire NHL, including for the Habs. Lots of moving parts going on right now, lots of rumors flying around, and I don't typically like talking about rumors, but I did a video on it on them a few days ago. People seem to like it, so let's do that again, and I'll try and touch on as much as I can and try not to miss anything. Some of these things I didn't fully theorize and put a ton of thought into. Some of these things I really did. I'm more than welcome to be educated, so get at me down in the comments if you disagree with anything that I say. Love to hear from people, love to chat back and forth. Helps me learn, and it's enjoyable for me. I hope it's enjoyable for you guys. So make sure to hit the subscribe button if you like these videos and the bell for notifications, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Scotian Canadian. The other thing, I'm not going to talk about who the Habs should draft tomorrow or today whenever you're watching this, because I'd be lying if I told you I had any clue who was available. So what I like to do is once the Habs make their picks, I come and give you guys the full lowdown on our new prospects. So immediately once our first overall pick is used and we make that selection, if we make that selection and don't trade it, we'll get into that. I'll have a video up on who our new first round pick prospect is. Shortly after that, I'll go through the entire draft, put out a separate video, and give the lowdown on all of our new prospects. So anyway, that's enough housekeeping. First, I want to mention that in the draft, we do have a ton of picks. We got 11 picks heading into the draft. That's important to note before we talk about rumors, because Montreal has a ton of assets right now that potentially they could use in a trade to fill some holes on the roster. We've got round one, we got 3 picks in round 2, a round 3 pick, 3 round 4 picks, round 5, round 6, and round 7. So 11 picks in total, and 3 of them are in the top 50 of the draft. So lots of valuable pieces there, and regardless, we're going to be adding some very interesting prospects to our team after this upcoming draft is completed. Also like to mention, we currently have $10.2 million in cap space. However, that does not include Max Domi. He's a restricted free agent right now, needs a new contract. I suspect he'll land somewhere in between $5.5 and $6 million, short term or long term. I just feel like the AAV, the cap hit, is going to land somewhere between $5.5 and $6, and that'll take up some of that significant amount of that $10.2 million. It also does not include Mete. Now, I don't think he's going to be getting some crazy raise. Just throwing this out there, probably somewhere $1.5 million, $2 million at the most for Victor Mete. So that would still leave us a little bit of wiggle room, but you also have to keep in mind that next season, Danault and Gallagher's raises will be on the books as long as neither of them are traded. I don't think Gallagher will be traded at all. I definitely think he'll be locked up long term. Jeff Molson has came out and given his full support to Marc Bergevin to keep Gallagher in the system long term. So, but Danault, it's another story. I personally think he's going nowhere, but you never know. A lot of people suspect he could be traded due to the Habs' current center depth. So their raises coming onto the books, not this season approaching, but the season after, you got to think that Gallagher's going to fall somewhere. They're probably going to fall, Danault and Gallagher, somewhere around the same mark, $6 million or so. Maybe Gallagher ends up a little bit more than 6 and Danault under a little bit under 6. I threw out a number in my last video, a $6.25 million cap hit for Danault. I got called out in the comments and on Reddit for that being too much. I totally agree. That my bad there. That's how I learn, right? You guys call me out. I reevaluate my position. I may disagree with you, or I may agree with you and change my opinion. So, like I said, love to chat, whether it's on Reddit, Twitter, down in the comments of these videos. So get at me if you disagree with anything I say here. Kotkaniemi also will be getting a raise, not this season, but the season after. However, I don't think, where he's so young, his raise will be insanely significant unless he goes off and is an elite player this coming season, which would be a bonus, really. I wouldn't mind paying him if he ends up doing that. So really, the reason why I'm giving this brief rundown of our cap structure and where it sits and how much space we have is because we kind of have to be careful at this point the transactions we make. Right now, we don't have any cap trouble, but we could easily have cap trouble if we make some desperation moves, or if we make some moves that aren't fully thought out in terms of the future implications to our cap structure with the extensions that are coming up. However, I have full confidence in Marc Bergevin in managing a cap. He's done a fantastic job of it during his tenure, his entire tenure with the Montreal Canadiens. His negotiating skills with contracts is absolutely phenomenal. You look at the contract that Jeff Petrie just signed, very team friendly, and it's not like Petrie's a hometown player or nothing like that, but it goes to show you the culture that Marc Bergevin is building, and I don't think that's going to change with some of these other extensions coming up. Okay. That's enough about that. Let's get into some rumors here. I think that's why you guys are all here. First, I want to talk about Josh Anderson because I love the player and I'm seeing a lot of disrespect or just some slighting thrown his way on Twitter. People seem to think he's only worth maybe a second-round pick because of the most recent season he had. But he was dealing with some significant injuries. Prior to that, he was developing very nicely into a very strong power forward, one of the strongest power forwards in the NHL, or potentially the way he was developing. He had 19 goals as a 23-year-old. Then he had 27 goals as a 24-year-old. But he's right now dealing with a left shoulder injury. He had to get surgery. Major surgery. So, and I think the way the Columbus Blue Jackets handled it wasn't taken too kindly by Josh Anderson, the player. Caused some tension between him and his current club. But he's currently a restricted free agent, so that's why he's potentially out there on the market. I would absolutely love to acquire a guy like Josh Anderson. Been a fan of his for a couple of years. He is tough as nails. He plays the game old school, cut from the same cloth as Tom Wilson. That's the type of power forward you win a Stanley Cup with. So, now, in terms of value, what we'd have to offer up to get Josh Anderson, first and foremost, you got to know whether or not he's willing to sign long-term in Montreal, because you're going to have to pay a hefty price. It's not going to be just a second-round pick to get a power forward like Josh Anderson, being he's right-handed, he's a right winger, he's got the size at 6'3", 222 pounds. These guys are very valuable. Me personally, my list in terms of what type of player and positionally holds the most value, you got your number one center, your number one right-handed defenseman. Then you have your top six center. Then after that, I would say you have your top four left-hand defensemen and top six or top pair or top line right winger, about the same value. So that's not too far down on the list. 1C, number 1D, then you have your left wing or lefty and big right wing tied. It's a very valuable and hard position to acquire. Guys like Josh Anderson do not end up on the market very often. If it wasn't for his recent major injury, I don't think he'd be available at all. Me personally, I would easily, no-brainer, give up our number 16 overall pick for Josh Anderson. That's a huge risk on our part, and maybe our first could be utilized in a better fashion where we get a player where there is no risk involved. However, if Josh Anderson didn't have this injury and didn't have the risk involved in acquiring him, I think he'd be worth much more than just a mid-round first round pick. Definitely. And I don't think he'd be available. So the fact that he's available in the first place is we'd be lucky to acquire a guy like Josh Anderson. And you know what? There's going to be a ton of interest in him from the entire league. There could be a bidding war for him because of the value. Another player, we'll move on from him. Let me know if you disagree with that. I'm sure many people will. Another player, very similar role. That I'm not sure if he's available or not, but I'd love to see him in a Montreal sweater, and that's Anthony Mantha, also a restricted free agent. He's even bigger than Josh Anderson, and he's fast too for the size. He doesn't play as tough as Josh Anderson does, but he's still got the size. He does utilize it for the most part. 6'5", I think 230 or 235 he's listed at. Mantha is huge, and he puts up points, and he's a sniper. Around 25 goals each year he scored, and I'm sure he's a young kid, 26 I believe, entering his prime, just like Josh Anderson. I'm sure he's got a very interesting and strong few NHL years ahead of him in his prime years as a power forward. You'd have to give up even more for Anthony Mantha, I would suspect. You're looking at, you got to think about what Detroit would want in return for a guy like him. It's probably start at Max Domi, or maybe you'd be looking at Caulfield and a first-round pick, which is a huge price. But honestly, for a guy like Anthony Mantha, I would consider paying that. And I'm going to bring up Caulfield a few different times here in these rumors. I'm personally, no disrespect, and I'm probably completely wrong. I saw that Cole Caulfield was advertised in a special draft day programming that the Habs are going to do or something like that. So he's likely nowhere near the block for the Habs. But I got nothing wrong with them drafting him either. But I've never really been sold on the pick. Nothing against small players, but the guy is tiny. And right now, I think he's listed at 5'7", 160 pounds. And there is guys that size that come into the NHL and thrive, especially today. But in terms of a long playoff run, I'm not sure, if that's the type of guy I want to rely on as my number one goal scorer. Probably going to take heat for making that comment. The other thing is, normally I probably wouldn't be on board with trading away a guy that's ranked this high on prospect lists and considered to be likely an elite level talent in the NHL in a few years. But with the pandemic that's going on right now, Cole Caulfield might lose some significant development time, and that will be very detrimental for a small player. The NCAA is currently not planning to play this year, so that is a significant amount of hockey that's not going to happen for Cole Caulfield. I think he was rumored to go to Europe, but I believe he has since declined that being true, and that's not in his plans to go to Europe. So I'm not sure how this guy's going to develop in terms of, his hockey ability when he's not playing hockey. There is a World Juniors, but that's just a short tournament. Maybe the extra gym time could benefit him, but I don't see how being off the ice for the better part of a year is going to help this guy. At this point, if he's going to be a prospect for us, you may as well get him into our camp. Maybe get him playing with Laval sooner than later. But that is generally why I am somewhat in favor of including Cole Caulfield in a package. He's listed very high on prospect lists, very, very high, so you want to sell high on him too. We wouldn't be trading him unless we're getting something very significant back. So maybe that can lead me, I mentioned him in the Mantha thing, maybe that can lead me into Patrik Laine. And I've already talked about Patrik Laine, but if we could avoid trading Max Domi for Patrik Laine, that, I feel, would be in the Habs' best interests. I don't want to be... See, the thing is, Montreal has spent a significant amount of time gathering the assets that we have. And we have very good young assets on the current roster and great potentially elite prospects too. I'm not sure if this is the time to make a massive package and deplete our cupboards in the NHL and in our prospect pool for one single player. And if you're going to acquire Patrik Laine, it's likely going to take a first plus Domi plus a high-level prospect. And they're going to be asking for Romanov or Norlinder, considering Winnipeg's defensive woes right now. They just lost a significant amount of ability to defend. Coming into this season with Byfuglien leaving, they lost Sherratt. So, personally, if the most I would do for Patrik Laine would be the first-round pick, that number 16 overall, Cole Caulfield. I'd chuck Thomas Tatar in there because we got to find space in our top six to put Patrik Laine in, and Tatar is a soon-to-be UFA. So that, maybe add Paling into it too. And the thing is, that's likely not enough to get Patrik Laine. He's a 35 to 40 goal scorer at 22 years old. Maybe it would be wise to throw Domi in there, keep Danault, and then we roll with Kotkaniemi, Suzuki, and Danault as our centers. But you'd still have to add to Domi to get Patrik Laine. And Domi has shown at 23 years old, he was able to put up 72 points at center. So he should hold incredible value. But I'm not sure if GMs will offer up what he's truly worth because of the season that he just had, putting up only 50-some points. So they'd likely want us to add, and like I said, it's going to be Romanov or Norlinder or Caulfield into the pick. But if we're trading Caulfield, I'm not adding Domi on top of it. That's for sure. So anyway, that's my spiel online. I already talked to him. Talked about him. I figured I'd bring it up again. Just where we're coming very close to the draft, and all these rumors are kind of coming to a head here. Next, why don't we move on to some possible free agent signings? Actually, you know what? A couple more trades. Let's go over them right quick. Alex Killorn, he's been rumored to come to Montreal. I've seen people want to give a first-round pick for Killorn. No, I'm good. No disrespect to the Halifax native, but I mentioned it in my last video about Domi having a high shooting percentage at a young age being not a big deal. Personally, I don't think Domi having an outlying shooting percentage young is something that's never going to happen again. But if you look at Alex Killorn, he had a high shooting percentage, somewhere around 20% at 30 years old. He's typically a 15 to 17 goal scorer, but he scored 26 this year, if I'm not mistaken. 30 years old, that's an outlying season for a guy that age. Maybe he's able to repeat that once more, but I'm definitely not giving up a first-round pick for Killorn. Maybe a second-round pick, but I'm not sure we need another middle six winger. We need some elite-level talent or some upper echelon, actual first-line players on our team, not an Alex Killorn who's going to float in between the third line, maybe get up on the second line. Like I said, no disrespect to the Halifax native there, but I'm saying no thanks on an Alex Killorn deal. Alex Radulov, Dallas has some cap structure issues right now, something due to bonuses I read somewhere, and we got Dallas fans looking to trade away Alex Radulov. Shocker that Marc Bergevin did not want to overpay for Alex Radulov back a couple years ago due to the age that he was, the stage of the build that the Habs were in. We would have had to pay more for Radulov than Dallas did. We offered the same amount. He went to Dallas. I'm glad we didn't do it, because now Dallas could potentially be looking at getting rid of Alex Radulov. Now, I wonder if we could get Alex Radulov back on the Montreal Canadiens roster. I think he's 34 years old now, though. However, it shouldn't cost that much to acquire a player who has 2 years left on his deal until he's an unrestricted free agent. And they'd be looking to move him due to their cap issues. The other thing is he has a no trade clause in his contract, so he'd have to agree to the trade, and I'm sure he'd be willing to come back to Montreal as long as Marc Bergevin's "if you want loyalty, buy a dog" comments didn't ruin that relationship. But maybe he'd be willing to come back. And could we trade a second round pick for Alex Radulov? Is that not enough? Is that too much? I don't know. You let me know down in the comments. Or do we do a second round pick plus Paling, for example, and get Dallas to retain some salary, so we end up getting Radulov back? Let's say they retain $1.5 million. We end up getting Radulov back and paying him $4.7 million for the last 2 years of his contract to play right wing. He's a power forward. That would fit perfectly on our team. I don't know. I like the sounds of that, if you ask me. I loved Radulov in Montreal, the energy he had, his goal celebrations. He seemed like a great team guy. They talked about how hard he practiced. I'd be down for that. I really would. Now, let's go into some potential free agent signings. If, we don't end up making a trade that nets us that scoring that we're looking for in our forward core. Maybe a player like Mike Hoffman, put up 70 points and was on pace for around that this season. He put up 70 points in 2018-19, was on pace for it this season in 2019-20. He's 30 years old. He is a left winger, though. We're not necessarily looking for a left winger, but he pots 30 goals every year. As long as, if we could sign him for, midterm, 3 years or so, that wouldn't be too shabby. Then another Florida player, Dadonov. He actually is a right winger. He's been getting paid $4 million for the last few years when he returned to the NHL. He's 31 years old, so he'd probably be looking to cash in. This might be a hard contract to make. However, his season this year wasn't as good as his last two. He in 2017-18, 65 points. In 2018-19, 70 points. And then in 2019-20, he was on pace for somewhere around 55 points. So maybe it's something that can get done. In terms of Montreal's build, it would have to be, you don't want to get locked into a bad contract. It's another one that would have to be midterm, somewhere around 3 years, something like that. I typically say you get $1 million per every 10 points you score. He just put up 55 points. We'd probably not want to get him for $5.5 million. Because of his age, you'd want to look somewhere around 5. I don't know if that's possible. Just an option, throwing it out there. Now, a guy I'd really love to target, 28 years old, 24 goals last year for the Vancouver Canucks in 68 games. This is Tyler Toffoli, right winger. He's right-handed. He could slot into our second line on the right side very nicely. He'd be a great a shooter for Suzuki and Drouin if they continue to play with each other. You'd probably be looking at signing him somewhere between $4.5 and $5 million, but he'd be looking for a long-term deal where he's 28 years old, probably somewhere around 6 to 7 years. Not sure if he could really garnish that. Maybe he'd have to settle for 5. But $4.5, $5 million, somewhere around there, I'd be totally happy with a deal like that. Even if we use Tatar and put a package together first, Caulfield, something like that, to acquire a strong winger, maybe you then replace Tatar by signing Toffoli to a similar contract that Tatar's on. Tatar's at 4.8 right now in the last year of his deal. That kind of fits, very similarly to Tyler Toffoli. Now, what about Taylor Hall? Could we trade for the rights to Taylor Hall? I wouldn't give up too much for the rights to sign Taylor Hall because he's an unrestricted free agent anyway, and I can't see teams paying much just to talk to him early. Arizona can't rip off a team and ask way too much just for, a few days window to talk to the guy. I'm sure a few general managers would get together and say, you know what, let's just not give up one of our assets, wait for him to go unrestricted, and we'll all just take a fair shot at him, right? But you know what? Taylor Hall's an elite talent. He won a Hart Trophy a couple years ago. Maybe we trade our round 4 for him, for the rights, and then negotiate with him early, sign him to a nice deal. I think then he'd be replacing Tatar, who's an unrestricted free agent next year, so you'd probably be looking to trade Tatar if you end up signing Taylor Hall. That's what I think personally. Or do we go up to a round 3 to get his rights? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure Trevor Timmins would appreciate if Marc Bergevin did, but nevertheless, that's that. Now, why don't we talk about Marc Bergevin and Trevor Timmins' press conference today briefly? Marc Bergevin obviously has said that he'd be willing to trade his first overall pick. It's more available than it has been in the past. He's never ever traded a first round pick, and if he does, he has said himself it won't be something to help the Habs short term. It would have to be for something for an asset that stays with the Habs long term. I think personally a package is the way to go, round 1 plus, and then you get a truly elite level talent in your forward core. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And the thing is, I think today Marc Bergevin did a good job of setting the expectations straight. He's not desperate to trade this first round pick. He's more than willing to make the pick if he needs to. I also think that's some slight negotiation tactics to other GMs to say, you know what, if you want my pick, offer up something very good. Otherwise, don't even bother coming at me with anything. He mentioned the hot stove on it today was actually not that hot, very quiet in terms of potential trades right now. Who knows if he has some offers in and he just wanted to, put it out there that nothing has moved the needle for him whatsoever to this point. I really, Marc Bergevin, I've said it, is a good negotiator. And it's not just things he does in private. He uses the media very well to get his messages across. And I know sometimes fans don't like what he has to say, or in the past they haven't liked what he had to say. But I find him honest and open. I always have. And, straight shooter. And I think it bodes well in terms of what other GMs think of what he has to say and how he values his own assets. Trevor Timmons today also mentioned that the scouting staff of the Montreal Canadiens is fully on board with Marc Bergevin, and they trust him and support him if he feels he needs to trade that first-round pick. He also mentioned he does not see how a player they pick in this first round of this draft could join the Habs next season. They're in the middle of the draft, so yeah, I agree with him there. It's pretty rare to ever have a guy get drafted anywhere past the top 5 and then make the NHL immediately, even past the top 3. So I think that's about it, guys. Let me know what you think about this video down in the comments. I said a lot, covered a lot. I'm sure people are going to agree and disagree, but I love the conversation like I've mentioned. So get at me down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you after the draft. I'm sure there'll be a ton to react to, a ton to review, whether that's trades, you know, and then we have free agent frenzy coming on Friday. So it's a lot's going on in hockey right now. It's going to be a very fun week. Hope you enjoy the content. Hit that subscribe button and the bell if you do. And follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Scotian Canadian. Cheers, guys. Go Habs, go, baby.